Back on track at Paul Ricard for the final practice session, pre-qualifying, if you will. 90 minutes to learn this circuit. My name's Bruce Jones, joined by John Watson. Watty this morning. Very, very difficult circumstances for the drivers when they went out. It hadn't been raining, but there was no grip. Super slippery.
In fairness, it wasn't rocket science. We could see it from the commentary booth. We could see it on screen. We could tell that the main straight, the Mistral straight, certainly in the right-hand side was damp. You could clearly see all the curbings were holding moisture. The far end of the circuit rounds, turns 4, 5 and 6. There was a mist, a haul, whatever you care to call it. And just drivers went out and they didn't maybe appreciate, with only 8 Celsius track temperature, 13 ambient. It's up to 18 now. That's ambient, so nice sort of mid or early afternoon, 16.4 for track. Almost double where we were this morning. So teams, drivers ought not to face or have to confront the problems they had somewhat earlier today. But nevertheless, on that out lap, on that first flying lap, observe the racetrack. It's a changing thing. It's almost a living thing.
Well, let's take a look at the points. This is the Endurance Cup, and it's the pairing, the trio from ACA 88. Raffaele Marciello, Timo Bogoslawski and Felipe Fraga. Then Sven Muller, equal on points, Christian Engelhardt and Matteo Carreri there. Then Dynamic Porsche, very, very close. It's going to be a real countdown, but so many crews could take this overall title in the Endurance Cup. Alas, Lawrence Van Toor, Earl Bamber not here, having won the Spa 24 Hours. That was a phenomenal result that very nearly didn't happen, but really it's about consistency through the course of this Endurance Cup. And then of course we have the overall title, the combined title if you will, to pitch for as well here this weekend. It's the 9th meeting of the 2020 GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. How close would you like it? Again, we've had the joint honours at the top of the overall chart, but in ahead of pre-qualifying, it's Sky Tempesta Ratings, Jonathan Hui, Eddie Cheever the third, Chris Frogger equal on points with Garage 59, note they're on 59, Chris Goodwin and Alexander West and Johnny Adam. So that's as close as you could possibly have it there as well in the Pro-Am Cup. And still some drivers further down that order who could yet feature, at least in the races. The race here, tomorrow's race, the 1,000 kilometres at Paul Ricard. But before now and then, we've got this practice session, John, and the qualifying as well for them to show what they can do.
This is a very important session. It is a pre-qualifying session. That's maybe the key for all the teams right now. But remember, this 6-hour event will be already coming up to about 2 and a bit hours long. So what teams are going to contest or have to confront now is conditions which are very similar to what they will have to face something coming up to midway during this 6-hour event. So, as we see it again, the Silver Cup. Yes.
What I'm going to say, the first 2 tables we were shown had 2 teams tied at the top of each of them. But look, Frederick Schandorf, Alex McDowell and Patrick Kujala leading the Silver Cup class by 17 points. At last, a margin. That's the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini crew. So they've just got to keep their noses clean, not make mistakes. They've had a really, really strong season. Slight trip up at the Spa 24 Hours. For them, not their fault, but they at least have a little bit of breathing space. But for all the other championship challenges in Pro-Am and overall in this Endurance Cup elements of GT World Challenge Europe, it's as tight could be. So yes, you're quite right. This session absolutely vital. If you could qualify even a couple of places ahead of a title rival, whether for overall victory or for your class within the overall battle, then of course that's a massive advantage, John. And let's just take a look at the AM Cup in the Endurance. Stefan Trebudini has some new teammates this weekend, but they'll be trying to support him in his challenge, leading by, well, a tidy margin. Championship effectively in the bag for him. But certainly the AM runners, a lot of them come mainly for the Spa 24 Hours, of course, the big rig, the big race of our regular season. But great to have them on board. And some of these AM racers will become AM racers with a pro in years to come and move up to the Pro-Am class. But right now, the track is open, flags fluttering gently down the pit lane. As you saw, air temperature 18 degrees, track temperature double what it was when they went out first thing this morning. But we'll have 40 cars out on track, or maybe 39. We've got to see if Sansalot Racing have managed to repair their number 26, the blue and white Sansalot car, running in the AM class. Christophe Hamon Michel Blanchemin and Fabien Michal, who put that into the wall at the final corner at the end of their first flying lap. So we'll look out for that, but hopefully the full quart of 40 cars.
Yes, and that'll include the number 3 Bentley, which we saw I think on the first flying lap, likewise coming through turn 7. That's the quick turn left as you come onto the Mistral Straight. Ran wide, got over those very moist curbs on a set of cold Pirelli dry weather tyres. That amalgam does not work, and it rotated the Bentley and went then 90 degrees off track, straight across the traffic that was coming alongside it, and then hit the tyre bale, damage to the right front of the car, and hopefully that car has been repaired. There's nothing of a structural nature, but of course it put the number 3 Bentley on the back foot. Maybe not the worst place it could have been, because if they can get out of this session, these are the conditions by which they're going to be competing more or less for the duration of that 6 hours. So this morning, if you're going to have an incident, have an accident, have it in the morning session, get it out of the way.
Tomorrow's race, the 6 hours, starts at 11:45, so track conditions should be absolutely fine. But 6 hours on, that takes it to 5:45 in the afternoon. It will be getting towards dark, but importantly, John, by then the temperature in the middle of November would have started to plummet. So they do need to find their form across a range of tyre temperatures and track temperatures.
Again, it's the first time this event has been held at such a late date during the season. There is that Pentelock Audi, the one that we saw, and to me that was a mechanical failure of some description, because there was a lot of oil on the track on the exit of turn 15, and of course that may have been the reason why the car went out of control into the barriers. So there was actually fluid, we don't know whether it was oil, water or whatever, that had to be cleared up. I suspect it was mechanical of some description, which could have been oil, water, even hydraulic fluid.
Well, anybody's guess. Still fixing that 26 Sansalot racing car, but competing in the Silver Cup. Frederic Schandorf, he's sharing this Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini with Alex McDowell and Patrick Kugeler, and they are absolutely flying in the championship, leading that by 17 points. We've looked at all those championship tables, and they were the only ones with an advantage, that's all.
So the Barwell Lamborghini powering its way all the way down the Mistral Straight. Actually, something I was interested to note that in the GT4 support event, they're actually using the chicane, as opposed to with this event, of course, there's no chicane in use whatsoever. And I thoroughly enjoy watching the pace of these cars and the body angle of these cars as they make their way through Scene, which is that wonderful, very, very tricky, it's actually a blind apex, because you're actually rising up as you come into Scene. So in a low slung GT3 car, even at the height that they're sitting, you have to anticipate the apex rather than you actually see it.
Yeah, they were using the chicane as well in the Formula Renault Euro Cup as well. But to me, to be denied the chance to see these cars getting a tow up the Mistral Straight in all its majesty would be a massive, massive shame. So much performance in these cars, and also to see the speeds they achieved. What did we see? 280 kilometres an hour on the turn into Scene. Fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty impressive speed. Right now, Tom Blomqvist is the man who is set fastest second sector now, and it's Matej Rudy who's set fastest third sector. I mean, momentarily, Tom Blomqvist is quickest. I say momentarily because I suspect by the time all the other, certainly the pro cars, have completed their first flying lap, that 1 minute 55.732 will be decimated.
Yeah, well, the fastest time we saw this morning on a cooler track, well, a second faster than that, 1 minute 54.4. That was set, we think, by Dorian Boccolacci, sharing the other Sansalot racing Audi, the one that completed the session with Marcus Winkelhock and Christopher Haase. And in fact, the Tom Blomqvist performance, he was the first car out of the pits, the first to put a flying lap on the board, eager to catch up. Late call up here this weekend. James Collado not in the car, he's competing in the WEC, the World Endurance Championship at Bahrain. So into that car came Colm Ledegaard. Sam Bird was supposed to have a go, but then he was called away to do some Formula E testing. I'm sure he'd far rather be here for the 6 hours, but alas, contracts are contracts. And Tom Blomqvist, who knows Ferraris very well indeed, has been racing for Hub Auto Racing in their grey Ferrari over the year. and looking very tidy at the moment on his second flying lap. But it's Christopher Mies top of the charts now, 1:55.1 seconds.
Yes, Christopher Mies took over half a second out of Tom Blomqvist's previous lap. Blomqvist coming up now to complete what will be his third lap. So traffic is going to probably have a bearing on that. He's not going to be able to do very much. He's just going to have to hang back as much as he can. It's one of the Barbara Lamborghini, if you think looking at it, it is. So Blomqvist, all he can do is he's going to lose time in that final sector, which maybe would have knocked sufficient amount of that time off. He drops out to fourth place because now Tony Verlander in the SMP Blomqvist has regained it. So in that last sector, he did actually do a good enough time. 1:54.995. Literally, as the cars come around, and he gets past the Lamborghini going into turn one as he goes on to his fourth lap. I didn't think he was going to get that time back. I thought the Lamborghini might just knock a couple of tenths or so off that last sector time, but Tom Blomqvist did a good job. First driver in this current, we are just 7 minutes into this session. First driver into the 1 minute 54s, and that's half a second away from the very best we saw from, we think, Dorian Boccolacci in the 25 Santa Log Racing Audi.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the Ferraris from AF Corsa and SMP Racing were very much at the front of the queue to get out into this session. We did lose a little bit of time in this morning's 90-minute session. We had those 2 red flags early on. And when the teams are trying to circulate through their drivers, you know, they really need track time. Right, another car that's featuring very strongly in the championship reckoning. Second, but equal on points with the class leaders in Pro-Am. Johnny Adam, Chris Goodwin and Alexander West in the 188. Garage 59. Aston Martin's been going well. Alexander West, almost greedy for racing. He's been competing all around the planet this year. Despite COVID, he's done as much as he can. I'm used to seeing him in this car, of course, the Aston Martin, also competing in Ferraris, the European Le Mans Series, and wherever he can get seat time. What a lucky position to be in.
Absolutely. I mean, a very successful businessman, I think still based in Hong Kong, but he seems to have plenty of free time. I don't think he's been furloughed, but certainly he finds himself with plenty of free time to fulfill his dreams and go motor racing in wonderful GT3 cars, Aston Martins, Ferraris. In the meantime, Christopher Mies in the number 32 Audi WRT team has just got himself by 0.03 of a second ahead of Tom Blomqvist in the AF Corsa Ferrari. Another good run at the minute is Jens Klinsmann in the Butson Gini on BMW. That's a Pro-Am entry. He's the pro in that Pro-Am entry. Currently fourth quickest on a 1:55.2.
Well, we saw him up the charts again earlier this morning. The times are really changing in that final quarter of an hour. The order totally got shuffled, but certainly I saw him, that car for Butson Gini up as high as 6th place. So going better this afternoon now. Alexander West listed down in 34th fastest at the time. Look at those times sectors. He's gained 3 seconds in the first 2/3 of the lap. Of course, his lap time is going to improve. I don't know how far up the charts it will move him, but certainly track much kinder this morning. In fact, he gained, there we are, 3.8 seconds. That chucks him up the order by 4 places. They're running in the Pro-Am class. The leader in the Pro-Am class is that Jens Klingmann BMW, up in 4th overall. Second in the Pro-Am class, well, Phil Keane. You expect him to be near the front. He's 14th overall for the FFF racing team with his Lamborghini. Still Christopher Mies at the top of the charts, but a better lap coming from Tom Blomqvist. He's only down by 3/1000ths of a second in second place. Okay, the best time we had this morning, just reiterate that was Dorian Boccolacci, Santa Log Racing Audi, 1 minute 54.4 seconds. Now a car that, just looking at the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari. Dramatic finale for the Sprint Cup at Barcelona. That car ending up in the wall, but luckily for them the title was already in the bag. And Eddie Cheever was tentative early this morning when the track was at its most slippery, but right at the end really did pick up the pace, and they share the Pro-Am title lead, the same number of points as that Garage 59 Aston Martin. But Eddie Cheever, Jonathan Froggatt and Hong Kong racer Jonathan Hui, who came over to the Magny-Cours Sprint Cup round and took 2 wins with Giancarlo Fisichella for this team in their second car. You know, they're a really good strong pairing, and Chris Froggatt in particular really has come on enormously through the course of this season, hasn't he, John?
Yes, it's been a very good effort all through the season. Eddie Cheever did a very good job this morning. In fact, only in the final moments they were eclipsed in the Pro-Am category by the 77 Barwell Lamborghini, that time done by young Scott Sandy Mitchell, who starred last weekend at Silverstone So continuing the form that he enjoyed in that 3-hour event, coming into a double that duration, a 6-hour event. Looking further down the field, in 13th place, haven't seen very much of them all day so far. Orange 1 FFF Racing Team Lamborghini, number 63. That was the winningest car throughout the 2019 season. Marco Mappelli behind the wheel, so that's going to lob itself up into the top 10, I think, very quickly indeed when that lap is complete. But right now it's still Christopher Mies who has done the best of the entire field.
Already cars calling into the pits, riding in the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari, but the second fastest Ferrari for AF Corsa. Tom Blomqvist sent those early laps. We expected this. All the teams, bar Mad Panda Motorsport, have 2 further drivers to cycle through their cars. Time and plenty. We've only just done 11 minutes of this 90-minute session. Wow. But pushing on very hard indeed. Well, no surprise there. The 32 Audi, Belgian Audi Club Team WRT, Dries van Tor, Chris Mies. Oh dear, the BMW.
I don't know, can't see if it's a puncture or not, but he certainly pulled off. It is the right rear.
Or is it the front?
I don't know whether maybe it is the front, but certainly it's a tire, and he's got the hazard lights warning just to indicate that he knows he's got a major problem and trying to stay out of the racing line as much as possible, but it is the right front indeed. And
it went very early in the lap, John. He was in the first sector alone. He was down by about 14 seconds. Then he started limping through the second sector as well. So 4th fastest at the moment for Boutson Ginion Racing. Hopefully no damage done, because certainly Jens bringing that in as a pro driver should, sensibly, trying his best not to go too fast to damage the car.
For those that are followers of the Orange 1 FFF Racing Lamborghini team, to give its full title in one breath, Marco Mappelli had fastest, still holds fastest first sector time, good second sector time, but bailed out of the laps who came into the pits. We never saw what that full potential is as we look at Christopher Mies in the 32 Audi, currently the fastest car on track, sharing with Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts.
So that always used to happen to me as a very, very keen schoolboy, standing on the banking with my stopwatch. You put a time on a car and then dive into the pits. You curse in those days. You might have 2 stopwatches if you were super keen, but always of interest. Christopher Mies, his best lap still 1 minute 54.992. No longer. He's shaved a tiny fraction, 9 1/1000ths off it, so he's consistent. Well, we know he is. We also know he's very, very quick. But he's really pushing, though, John.
Yes,
the body language is...
Watching coming up and round out of... I've just got out of turn 11. He was riding the curve, and the ratcheting the car was doing over that curve. Really, really aggressive use of the curve by Christopher Mies on board with Timo Boguslawski in the 88. It's currently that car 5th quickest, 155.6.
Whoa, suddenly been demoted. Been demoted by a Silver Cup crew, Alex Acker. Just moved up a position, so now it's really changing. A few drivers have come out of the pits, setting their times, and Tom Blomqvist still second in the pits. Tony Villander still third in the pits. In the pits also the BMW, but Timo Boguslawski 5th. But around him, Matthias Drudy starting to make great strides as well. We'll see what happened to Alex Acker. He flashed on the screen and then disappeared again, so maybe it was an erroneous time that put him up into 5th place.
So 282, as it doesn't quite kiss the 280 kilometres per hour. You know, has to give it a bit of a lift down to 5th gear. Then down into this long, always a real car tester, the Busset. And if you've got a car that has an understeering tendency, that's the corner that will destroy your left front tire. Then up into this sort of frustrating corner, and through village into Tour. Right, sorry, I beg your pardon, it's Bendor. That was Bendor. Back to Timo Boguslawski.
Well, massive weekend for him. He ended up 4 points short in the Sprint Cup, and we had the final round of that at Barcelona back in October. But he comes here leading the Endurance Cup with his teammates Felipe Fraga and Raffaele Marcello. And also he's out front by 9.5 points in the combined championship. But we'll do all the maths for that later. Today, it's all about this session, finding form, finding consistency, getting the setup. This circuit, you do spend an awful lot of time with your car going around corners, bar the main straight and particularly the Mistral straight, with loading the whole time. So if you get your setup right, you really do reap the rewards here at Paul Ricard.
So into the pits comes the number 4. That currently is 9th place. Mauro Engel behind the wheel as the 52 Ferrari. That's the sister car. to the car that is currently second quickest. So 52 is a little bit further down.
It's the Pro-Am car.
Yes, the Pro-Am car.
Different
so
lineup
Louis
this
Bengal's.
weekend because we lost Andrea Bertolini. Lost him. He's just not here because he's tested positive for COVID-19. So Lorenzo Bontempelli joined Louis Michiels, and Maurizio Mediani brought in as well, and that's a very, very handy teammate for Louis Michiels to have, because Mediani knows Ferraris forwards, backwards and sideways.
Well, we know this car ended up in the tire bales on the exit of Stavolo on the Paul Craig curb in Spa 24 hours just 3 weekends ago. Heavy front end damage to the car. Maybe a lot of it was superficial, but certainly that car's race ended rather sadly in that tire bale. But there it is, back on track, as pristine as it was before, it attacked the tire bales. And of course are running these cars, the 51 and the 52 Ferrari.
And obviously in 2020, with the entire season being delayed at the start and then compressed, it does mean a lot of these teams are on the road the whole time from August onwards. It really has been a mammoth effort. So little chance to sort of recoup your losses, regain some energy between these events. But the fact we've got to the end of the season, we've had a season, is a real tribulation for all concerned. So Louis Michiels just getting some decent track time, and at least now you can afford to drive over the curb. If you did it this morning, you were asking for a spin, and we saw so many moments, particularly on the run down out of turn 2, the exit of Verrières, down through the chicane and to Saint-Baume. And also another problem they had this morning was sun right in their faces as they accelerated onto the back straight.
Another good news story right now is the number 3 Bentley. That was a car that we saw became a victim of the sun in your eyes coming through turn 7. It spent the entire session being repaired. Well, Maxime Soulet is behind the wheel. He's got that car currently up to 6th place, and they've got, well, they're on their 6th lap right now. But a good effort by the K-Pax team to get that car, the damage repaired, get it all squared up once again. There's the number 9, this is the sister car.
That's down in 19th place, 9 on the door, 19. But it just seemed this morning there was about a 10-minute period. If your car had a Bentley badge, something had to happen to it. So good to have them back on the track. And Jordan Pepper really does push that car very hard indeed when he's out and about. So Jordan driving that in 19th place overall. Most of the drivers have come in to do a driver change, or just at least chat to the engineers, and they're going back out, and now the times are going to start to drop down a bit, I feel.
A comment that was made this morning, which was very interesting, and one I'm watching with great intent. Mauro Engel said that this is actually a very tough circuit for cars because we use so much of the curbing. Watching Jordan Pepper and the Bentley coming down into turns 4, 5, 6, and then the exit through 7, using loads and loads of curbing. And while the curbing in itself is what you might describe as aggressive, but it has serrated, and it puts on a load of shock loading all the way through the car. And the point that Mauro Engel was making was that if you overdo the use of curbing, as long as you don't overdo track limit of use, you're going to give the car a really hard time.
Well, some of the drivers of a less sympathetic nature will just go, it's only got to last this weekend, but it's got to get through 6 hours. Tomorrow's race, 1,000 kilometres here at Paul Ricard. But a very good point, well made by Mauro Engel, always such an analytical driver, but also very, very quick, and certainly worth listening to him. So, still, the best time still belongs to Christopher Mies. He's done 2 laps in the 1 minute 54.9 time span, and only 1 lap, a similar time span by Tom Blomqvist. That is just 12 thousandths of a second slower. So they're the best. The next car, 0.13 of a second further back. That's Tony Villander. So we've got 2 Ferraris. The Ferraris didn't really show this morning, John, but certainly in the warmer conditions, they seem to be far, far happier. Best Ferrari this morning, I have to go down to 8th place overall. It was the Pro-Am car you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Sky Tempesta Racing, Chris Froggatt, Jonathan Hui, and Eddie Cheever the third. We're fairly sure it's Cheever who set that time. But just looking for some moves on, and we finally get it. K-Pax Bentley goes up into 4th overall for Jordan Pepper. 14 Emil Fry Racing Lamborghini, a real feature in the Sprint Cup, but at the moment down in 23rd position for Norbert Siedler. So time to be gained. In fact, he has to gain 1.5 seconds even to get close to the mix.
Again, what teams are choosing to do, because some of them would have maybe considered what we were doing early in the morning almost a write-off in terms of knowledge for the race. This session is going to be all about learning the conditions we're going to be confronted with come the start, 10:45. and maybe not everybody is necessarily, I'll get it the right way around, going for an out-and-out simulation qualifying run. What they're doing is running maybe with a degree of fuel on board with tires that are a number of laps on them to try and find the medium of performance and focus on that. And then maybe towards the end of the session, if there's an opportunity and they've got tires to spare, wow, doesn't leave a lot left there. Coming through, seen Norbert Siedler right on the ragged edge. Personal best, first and second sector. It's certainly pushing. Couldn't ask more than that.
You can't, and I just love that head-on shot looking from Bose back towards Sean. You really see the way, the attitude, the angle of those cars, and the sheer speed through Sean. It is mighty, and you can understand why the drivers love the challenge. Slightly fearful of it, but for Norbert Siedler, he's really trying to get a move on. Well, he needs to. He's down in 26th position. This lap is a better one than before, but that's not going to fire him up the charts. But certainly, the end of the lap was looking good. I think this next lap on clear track could be very good indeed.
Picked up 0.3 of a second. Whether that will bring him up into the top 20. Oh, it brings him up to the 4th. Well, there we go. That's a pretty big leap forward. It didn't seem that he was going to make that amount of time. With there we go. That's the sister car and bits of the rear. That was on the track, I think. That was flicked up by the Lamborghini. I don't think it came off the Lamborghini.
So still fastest, Chris Vermees, the 32 Audi from Belgian Audi Club Team WRT. He's sharing that this weekend with Dries van Tor and his regular partner in crime, Charles Weerts, the all-Belgian duo who between them won this year's Sprint Cup. Looking for more glory.
Just coming through, and just noticeable coming through turn 4. When you run the curve there, it is probably the more aggressive part of the curve. You can see the way the back end of the car sliding around as it comes up through turn 6, through turn 7. It's that kind of consistent and aggressive use that ultimately could lead to some kind of, it could be a mechanical failure, it could be an electrical component that get just the amount of shaking that goes on could become damaged. Anyway, Christopher Mies flat out, but nothing on this lap that's going to see any potential improvement. In fact, it's Mattea Drudi in the Anzemter Racing Audi who is now the quickest of all, and albeit he's 50 hundredths and 20th of a second quicker than Tom Blomqvist, who's now jumped up to second.
Who's equal its time. We have the top 4 cars covered, or top 3 cars covered by next to nothing, as John was saying. Jordan Pepper just a whisker behind them. Top 4 cars, top 5 cars. In fact, the next 2-3 are really close. Marcus Winkelhock now up to 5th. Sansalot Racing Audi, number 25. That was the fastest one this morning. Norbert Siedler pushed back to 6th. And Matt Campbell, GPX Racing Porsche, also right in the mix. So you're looking there at 0.2 of a second, covering the top 7 chargers. Top 8 chargers. Tony Villander also in that mix as well. So things changing at the top. The drivers had their little visit to the pits. They've picked it back up. Still about a third of the cars in the pits, which leaves a bit more space on the track. How good's this lap from Chris Mies? Again, a second off his best, but again, nice clear track for him. Well, it was until Alessio Lorandi just pulled out in front of him. That's been passed nice and easy though. That was Lorandi coming out in the Get Speed, the bright red number 100 Mercedes. That's running in the Pro class, shared with Jelmer Berman and Fabian Schiller. Fabian was setting some good times this morning. Good to see the BMW back on the track on 4 round black flags, John, after its puncture.
Yeah, good job getting the car back, and there's always a balance between wanting to get back to the pits as quickly as possible.
The bonnet's loose though.
The bonnet is flapping a little bit, and that you want to make sure that the team will, I'm sure, be aware of it. They'll see it on screen. They'll be watching these images.
Yeah, it's fixed in the middle, but a little loose on the side. Going to scene, you think of that speed. I wouldn't want something that could potentially come loose, that's for sure.
I think if it came loose, it wouldn't last loose very long because it would fly sky high very quickly. The pressure on it would just rip it out of its mountings. So Vanderlei in the BMW, that car, it is currently down in 11th place from the time set. Oh, there he's off track. Is that a repeat? Is that a repeat? No, it's not. He's on track.
That's right. Well, we've got a new name at the top of the charts. It's the Hout Racing Team, new for 2020. And Gilles Vanderlei obviously doesn't like that bonnet being a little bit loose. He's pitting. And it's Maro Engel at the top, 1 minute 54.5 seconds. So suddenly, having had everybody covered by 0.2 of a second in the top 7, 8 cars, he's now 0.3 of a second clear of the best of the rest, which is Tom Blomqvist.
And that's within 1/10 of a second of the best time we saw this morning from the 25 Santalog Racing Audi. So that's a good run from Maro Engel, and He's gone on. Well, in fact, it was a personal best in the second sector in the pits now.
Yep, suddenly busy. Just over an hour to go in this 90-minute session, the last one ahead of qualifying. Make your space on the track, get the balance of your performance sorted. Lovely day here in the south of France. Coolish, air temperature about 18 degrees, which isn't too bad at all for November, but certainly we are preparing for a temperature gradient that will really chime in the second half of tomorrow's race. Well, the final hour or so. I think the drivers will find the cars are a little bit tired and the tyres are certainly not going to behave. But right now, clearly a lot more grip. Looking at the 54 Dynamic Motorsport Porsche being pushed very, very hard indeed. But the best Porsche as it stands down in 9th place, Matt Campbell. And for Dynamic, their car not in the overall mix, down in 20th at the moment. Matteo Caroli pressing on, but it's the GPX Racing Porsche in behind him that's far, far better placed on the timesheets.
Yeah. I mean, I know we don't talk about it very much these days. A great shame, Max Book. He's in the 88 ASP Mercedes. He's found enough pace to put himself up to second quickest. A 154.730. That's just under 2/10 of a second. Slower than Maro Engel. So it's Mercedes, Ferrari. Then first of two Audis. Bentley running out the top 6 with Jordan Pepper.
Yeah, well, great to have Maxi back on board. You know, so much success in the early years of Blancpain, and you know, sometimes his career seems to have just taken a little bit of a side turning, but hopefully a good performance here this weekend will get him back into a full regular ride in this championship.
And I'm talking about Maxi Book. He's just gone fastest overall of the entire field in Sector 2. So he would be hoping, as we stand forward with Caroli and the 54 Porsche, having a little bit of a fight at the back of the car, but back to Maxi Book. Would like to think that he can maybe nick another couple of tenths of a second. This pit lane entry really it catches you out. You're watching a car coming through those final turns, through Village, turn 13, and you think he's going to go there and left, but he goes straight on. So there is the Mercedes. It stays in second place. Personal best, fastest overall, personal best, and the improvement is there, but it's 30 thousandths of a second away from the fastest time, still held by number 4 Mercedes, Maro Engel.
Yeah, find a pattern here. We've got Mercedes first and second, then a Ferrari, then 2 Audis, then a Bentley. So great mix of cars. Best of the Lamborghinis, Emil Frey Racing, Norbert Siegler now down in 8th place. Best of the Porsches in 9th. That's Matt Campbell, the better placed of the 2 GPX Racing runners.
We're just watching the 88 Mercedes coming through turn 6 and 7, and we can think back to how it was this morning. Everybody was absolutely on a knife edge, tentatively trying to balance the car on steering and throttle, waiting for that snap that they thought about to come. Now, absolutely no concerns whatsoever. The Mercedes was nailed, could use all of the racetrack he chose to use. Car sat there, did all his fast. Bit of a sort of wiggle coming through scene, though. Sort of maybe a little bit unexpected. Nevertheless, for Max Book, the car is behaving, and the racetrack has come to the teams where this morning it was really tricky. Lots of people getting caught out.
Well, that's a massive advantage. 6 kilometres an hour faster than anybody else for Tony Villander. The SMP Racing Ferrari at Scene, the most fearsome and fastest corner on the circuit. Very close for those in behind. But interesting, look, 5 different makes of cars in the first 5 positions on that chart for speeds through senior. Ferrari, Mercedes, Bentley, Porsche and Lamborghini. That's fantastic. That's a really good recommendation for the balance of performance.
So can Maxi Book capitalise on his fastest middle sector yet again? 2 consecutive laps. So comes up the cross start finish line. No, it doesn't appear so.
He lost 2 tenths in the final sector, but the rest was very good indeed. Great to see Maxi back.
Yeah, 2 consistent laps.
So still very, very close at the front. Those first 2 covered by 30 thousandths of a second, then another just 5 thousandths of a second back to Tom Blomqvist. Kim Lewis-Schramm has taken over the 66 Attempto Racing Audi. That was started earlier in the session by Matthias Drudi. He set the time that's good for 4th, but actually Kim Lewis has just wound that car up to a better pace through the first sector than it's seen before. So let's see what he can manage.
Louis Delatraz 13th currently, 155.2 personal best, sector 1. for the young Swiss driver out through turn 7. Just enjoying now a racetrack that is consistent. There is no damp patches to be seen anywhere. The curbing has dried out. Drivers love curbs. It's the biggest love of their life. If they could marry a curb, they would marry it.
So let's see. This lap's not going to be the best one for Louis Delatraz. Starting to pick up the pace. The people making the move, well, is anybody called Maxi Bouk, who's just improved yet again on that the middle sector of the 3, lapping it in under 30 seconds. Very few other drivers, I think no other driver has got under 30 seconds. He's done a 29.7 second run through that middle sector. Clearly very good speed onto the Mistral straight for him. Still second fastest, down by 30 thousandths of a second. Blink of an eye, no less than that, behind Maro Engel. But it's 2 Mercedes at the front, the Hout Racing Team and ACA ASP. It's number 4 ahead of 88. Good to see all the cars have gone out onto the track. Now we've got 38 times on the board. I'm just going to check if the second of the Sansalop cars has been repaired sufficiently to go out and play. Not yet, I'm afraid.
So Delatraz comes up to complete yet another lap, currently in 13th position. This is his 15th lap, just under an hour remaining, and Delatraz stays in 13th. So he got personal best in every sector, but not enough to enable him to get into the top 10. As we go back to the exit of scene, and well, a little bit of action going on amongst some of the Pro-Am cars and the silver cars. Lucas Lagaré in the Mercedes-Benz Silver Cup car. Alex Fontana is the sort of hot rod in that car. Benjamin Heaths likewise doing a good job learning by the event, learning by every mile. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Shouldn't say mile. Slap on the hand, John. Kilometre.
Yeah, 5 minutes in the corner, hands on your head for that offence. Second offence, hanging. Just remember that. So, car 89, Benjamin Heaths, as John pointed out, his first season in Europe, every circuit has been a novelty for him, and he's really stuck to the task with ACA ASP. Certainly in the first few races of the championship, anyone who wanted to hit anyone seemed to hit Paul Benjamin, but he's shown he's made us tough stuff. 2 seasons racing Ferraris in the States for the Chilean driver. I think he's thoroughly enjoying his time in Europe.
Well, he's had a great half a year of motorsport in Europe. He didn't get underway until sort of the back end of July, first race at that wonderful circuit, San Marino, or home of the San Marino Grand Prix, but actually it's in Italy. It's, of course, Imola. Now, what is he doing there?
Answers on a postcard, so that is, I mean, there's plenty of space to run wide, but he's got it wrong going down through the chicane. Has decided to be very late to rejoin the circuit. In fact, you almost felt as though he got lost. His road map had blown off his knee. Was
that the novelty question of the session? What was Benjamin Heaths doing not taking turn 4? Well, I think he missed it. He missed his braking, probably. He did the sensible thing. There's plenty of space at Paul Ricard. The circuit in its 50th year of use. When it was launched in 1970, I think it was a Formula 2 race. That was the inaugural race here. I think drivers, they had to get a road map because there was so much wide open spaces. There no points of definition, no demarcations. They wanted, can't race, this isn't a racetrack.
Well, I guess when all your career up to that point has been, what's my turning point? The third lowest branch on that oak tree, which is right over the side of the track. So on and so forth. Of course, if you raced at Silverstone, it felt wide open, but you didn't have much space either side of the track. Here, suddenly there was gap.
Bruce, that used to be the story. Coming up to the carousel at the famous Nordschleife at Nürburgring, I think it might have been someone like Jackie Stewart said, well, it's a tree there, and every year I aim for that tree. One year they cut the tree down and they went off. I think, now Jackie, I don't want to disparage you, but I hope that's a true story. It was a great story, I think.
I think so. Attention to detail. Right, let's just run down through the classes. The top car in the Silver Cup is one we've just been looking at there, the 89 Mercedes that we saw running wide in the hands of Lucas Leggere. He's 1 position ahead of Gilles Vannelet, who's leading the Pro-Am class. So that's really been a great run for Buisson Gignon with their BMW. Of course, that was the car, John, that came in with Jens Klingmann with 3.5 tyres, but he'd done a good job. He was up in 4th place. That really goes to show the M6, in his hands at least, can be right at the front of the pack. But of the heavy hitters, we've got the 88 ACA ASP Mercedes, now out of Maxi Bouk's grasp and in the hands of Raffaele Marciello. He's second, but only down by 3/100ths of a second on the leading Mercedes, the HRT Mercedes number 4. The 72 Racing, SMP Racing Ferrari is sure to be in the mix. Antonio Foucault just outside the top 10 at the moment, but that is a good mix of drivers because regular ace Sergei Sirotkin being joined by Tony Milanda, who's a Ferrari star.
Yeah, the 72 Ferrari, but it's the 51 Ferrari I want to see. There it is. Alessandro Pierre, that's the 72 again, sorry, just caught the red rather than the blue and white. But it's the 51 Ferrari, Alessandro Pierre Guidi, got 2 personal bests, first and second sector. So that car currently in 3rd position. So wondering whereabouts on that. We haven't got a map tracker to see precisely where that car is.
Okay, but what's on the move at the moment? They're all on the move, but it's the Bentleys on the move. Suddenly K-Pax racing their Bentleys. Maxime Soulet and Alvaro Perez 6th and 7th. The Spaniard ahead of the Portuguese. This was the team, the manufacturer, that seemed to have all the problems this morning. Any bit of bad luck was going their way, but good to see K-Pax racing in their real first crack at Europe, settling right in. Bentley you're looking at there is not one in the mix. That is one of the other cars from the Bentley Shuffle. Antonio Foucault continues to press on. The young Italian racer moved across from single-seaters last year and suddenly made an instant impact in the Italian GT Championship, and now he's rising up a level to come and compete here. He picks his way past. This won't be an improvement for him this lap, but again, neat and tidy. Going past one of the 2 CMR Bentleys there.
Yeah, he had to go the long way around the penultimate turn in Tour. So he got round the outside of the Bentley, slightly out of position then to go into turn 15, which will have a bearing on the lap he's about to go on to, as we see Alvaro Perez. So Alvaro, yet again back in Europe, seems to spend more time mid-Atlantic between events in North America and coming back to Europe. And always have high expectations of the Portuguese driver. Such a stellar supporter, competitor in GT3 racing now, coming up to, I don't want to sort of be ageist about it, but that must be close to a decade.
Yeah, absolutely so. After his days starring for Team Portugal in A1GP, he moved across to GTs and really has found a very, very happy hunting ground for him. Needs to get a move on. He's still in 7th place, and his rival and teammate Maxime Soulet has moved from 6th to 5th, so there is more speed to be found in the car. But the good news for Alvaro is in front of him he has clear track, which is always a bit of a blessing when you're trying to just pick up your pace, feel your balance.
Again, interesting to me, and maybe to many others, it appears that is the right-hand side of the Mistral straight is the side to use until you get 3/4 of the way down, then you make a cut across to the left to then launch into scene and hope that the launch and the exit are both successful.
Well, Alvaro, now down in 8th place, is improving on this lap, but the person who's higher up the chart who is improving, Alessandro Pierguidi, went up into 3rd, and Raffaele Marcello in 2nd is now homing in with his best first sector, his best second sector. He's only got to make up 3/100ths of a second. See if he can pick off the HRT Mercedes of Lucas Stoltz and go to the top. Stoltz can't respond. He's in the pit lane at the moment. Just waiting for Alvaro Perez to complete the lap in the number 9 K-Pax Racing Bentley. Just this final corner to go through Virage du Pont. Nice and tidy over the curbs there. Very, very clean.
Good exit, not wasting any energy, not letting the car slide wide, and the consequent loss of traction and maybe loss of time. Unfortunately, doesn't see any improvement for Alvaro Perez. So all the good yards he did in that middle sector in particular didn't pay a dividend, so he goes again.
Yeah, well, I was having a look to see if Raffaele Marcello could improve on that second place. He didn't. He backed off so comprehensively at the end of the lap that his lap time was nowhere near his best. But he still stays second. Still number 4 HRT Mercedes, Lucas Stoltz at the top, Raffaele Marcello, the 88 ACA ASP car in behind. Rob Collard watching in on from the pit garage as his car is out on the circuit for Barwell Motorsports. That's the bright yellow and green and black Lamborghini running so well in the Pro-Am class.
Yeah, one could almost say that Rob Collard is a born-again racing driver, having found a new platform which is in the Barwell team in the Pro-Am category, and he's just thriving. I mean, really, it's great to see. I mean, Rob has not my age, maybe closer to your age, Bruce, maybe a few days or maybe months younger than you.
I'll look it up.
But has found a new category of racing. It's endurance racing, but it's flat out endurance racing, and Rob is loving it.
Yes, you're quite right. Rob's born in the same decade as I am. I had the head start though. But look at him, he won't be pleased to be down in 37th position. That's right down at the tail of the pack, but that will improve. Be rest assured of that. He's really starting to wind it up, but not a lot of laps on the board for that car as yet. Now suddenly a load of traffic in the car that's top of the charts, right in the middle of it. Lucas Stoltz just emerged from the pits. Vincent Abril is the irregular in the team. He does the endurance rounds, but Mauro Engel and Lucas Stoltz, they seem to be tied at the waist for the past few years, and quite frequently walking up to the top step of the podium together.
Yeah, really good pairing. Seeing a lot of green for a number of drivers in first sector, second sector. Not so many greens in the third sector, but not surprisingly a huge amount of move up the field. There may be a couple of positions here or there, but there's nothing that's been stand out in terms of, wow, where did that time come from? So it's been really very much status quo for the last sort of 10 minutes, maybe or so, with the HRT Mercedes, ACA ASP provisionally first and second quickest, Ferrari and Audi third and fourth, Audi and Bentley fifth and sixth. Where somebody's got to come out of the pack and nail a 1 minute 54, quicker than a 54.511. And I wonder, will anybody be brave enough to take a set of tyres, a new set of tyres, to see ultimately what the lap time around this circuit is going to be. It's going to be a very, very tight qualifying, that's for sure.
Absolutely so, John, and that's exactly how we like it. And it's funny, you might have a practice session in which the times seem really spread out. I'm not talking about this one. Just to reiterate, the top three cars are covered by 0.035 of a second. You can't get much closer than that. But it's suddenly you get to qualifying and it closes and closes and closes right up. We start at 20 past 5 French time this afternoon, the first of those 3 qualifying sessions. They come thick and fast at you. 3 15-minute qualifying sessions. Rotate the drivers through. You've got to be sure all 3 of those drivers are confident and happy with the car.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it should be. I mean, I like sessions which, there's pressure on the teams and drivers all the time. Another team that's really, I suspect, and I thought might see more of, I think it's just gone up one position. That's the 31 WRT Audi, Mirko Bortolotti behind the wheel, Kelvin van der Linde and Rolf van Eycken. That's a car, likewise, which to me is out of position. It ought to be comfortably in the top 10. It's currently in 12th position. Mirko Bortolotti's done personal best, sector 1, sector 2, but driven back into the pits, didn't do a good, or came straight in. I don't know why he abandoned a lap where he would have had personal best, so clearly something he feels that can be improved upon.
Yeah, indeed. His was a car I was looking at earlier. It was down around 20th position. I was thinking, right, just keep an eye on that one. That will be in the top 10. Hasn't happened as yet. Lucas Stoltz, fast, about nearly half the field are in the pits at the moment, so plenty of space on the track. Lovely to see this autumnal sunshine. Down at this part of the track, that's turn 4, turning into turn 5, was in a light mist this morning, and if the drivers as much as touched the curbs, there was so much moisture, overnight moisture, dew held in those curbs, they were lethal. So many cars going for big wobbles, particularly down into that chicane, John, turns 3, 4 and 5, if you realise you couldn't turn. And we saw some of the best drivers going off down there. Dries van Tor had its moment, but it's that moment you come down, can I make it, am I going to spin? I will, so let's just drive over the chicane, and it was a sensible course of action.
I mean, look, those conditions, they were difficult conditions all around. Why would anybody be surprised? Because this time of year, with an ambient of 8, I'm sorry, the ambient was 13, the track was 8 Celsius. There had been a heavy overnight dew, there was moisture in the air, the humidity was extremely high. Nicholas Schul going through for Attempter Racing. So we're looking at some of them backs out of it now, looking for a bit of, well, I'm assuming he's backed out of it. He's certainly trying to get energy and heat into the tyres. So this may be a lap that is just an out lap for Schul now. Trying to get temperature into the sidewall, get it into the carcass of the tyre, get the tyre tread itself up to temperature. Oh, Dries van Tor. Purple. Haven't had a bit of purple for quite a while. Purple in sector 1. for the young Belgian driver.
Yeah, but who's fastest? Now a Ferrari, Antonio Fuoco. We watched him earlier for SMP Racing. He has finally toppled Lucas Stoltz from the top of the charts. Dries Van Tor had just gone up to 4th place. That's why, with Fuoco making the advance for SMP Racing, he's gone down to 5th, but he's not going to stay there for long. It's very, very tight between those top 5 runners, and he's improving all the time.
Interesting to see. Well, he's a fraction down in that middle sector. Wow, look at the pace he had through Scene. Carried mega speed, and then launches it down into Bousset. Stay on board with Dries Van Tor. Got to keep calling him young. He's getting old. He's in his 22nd year now. Then up to this difficult tour corner, makes the apex, runs the curve, but doesn't cleanly and gets the energy off the corner. Then flat out through this right-hander, which really is nothing at all. Village then into Tour itself. Gets the car straightened up, keeps to the left, then makes the cut back. Don't overrun the curve on the exit because you'll back to lose time. So can Dries Van Tor leap up from 5th place? I suspect he will, but how far will that leap be to 2nd?
Well, he really didn't want to waste that lap. I thought he'd slightly blown it at the final corner. It was a bit of a lumpy line he took around there. Really had to throw the car in. But between Tor and the final corner, you do have to chuck the car, John, don't you? You have to turn left so quickly and then right.
Well, the thing about the Tour itself as a corner is more about getting the car positioned for the final corner. You might sacrifice a fraction in Tour to get the car positioned so that when you go into the exit of Virage du Pont, turn 15, the car is positioned to get the straightest exit and therefore the reduction in loss of energy, because you might be sliding the car across the curve, which is the inevitable in that final turn.
Well, just looking at the speed mounts as Dries Van Tor, he's going to get up to about 250, is he, before he has to start braking?
Beyond
that. No, beyond. He's keeping going. Sorry, 280, I was thinking, is the speed you see at the top. But without the chicane...
Why is he backed off?
He's backed off completely, almost a... Oh, are we full course yellow?
Flag.
Must be yellow. Yeah, there we have, top of the screen. So immediately...
He got the notice on the screen. He's got a... There's a separate... You can see where the speedometer is showing there. That was flashing yellow. Or there's another gauge to the side of it, which goes FCY, and it's in your face. Immediately you've got to back off, so there's a reason why. Is it debris on the track? Has a car stopped on the track? Sometimes we've seen, well, I've had a number of cars picking up debris and getting a cut down tyre. So 50 kilometers per hour, creeping around there. Well, somebody's clobbered one of these corner, the bollards, so that's what's...
Okay, that's on the approach to the downhill chicane there as you go towards the bottom part of the circuit, and we've seen many drivers cutting the corners down there. So cut at your peril, because though you can knock those bollards over, they can give your car quite a clatter, and you really don't want to be damaging your aerodynamics by cutting the corners. And also the race officials will look at you if you're a repeat offender.
They don't like it.
So Antonio Fuoco, as we have this full course yellow, it shouldn't be a long one, leads the way by 0.131 of a second, and is now listed as Christopher Mies on board the 32 Audi, not Dries Van Tor. He's second fastest. He's a tenth of a second up on the driver who sat at the top of the chart for some while, Lucas Stoltz for HRT with his Mercedes. But of course we suddenly had this flurry of cars going into the pits. The track fell quiet, just started to go again. But what we saw with Mies, we heard earlier from Engel about how you ride the curbs here, and Mies was doing it the whole time, and you just imagine the vibrations going through the car.
And in fact, it's Christopher Mies in the car, this run that we're on now, Mies coming into the pit, so it was still showing on timing and scoring that it was Dries Van Tor, but in fact it was German Christopher Mies, who is one of the top Audi drivers in a family of top Audi drivers. So everybody's bailed back into the pits, but some have chosen to go back out, even if there's a full course yellow. I don't know the purpose of doing that. Probably you might want to sit in the pits and wait until the track has gone green again. Maybe there's an information in the pits that the track is going to go green very shortly. There's a two-part pits here, by the way. You've got a little crossover bridge, which is no longer in use. But in the good old days, you had two pit lane exits. One was midway down, you went under a tunnel and came out midway down, start, finish straight, and the other, which is now the only pit lane exit, at the far end of the pits.
Yes, again, you always think of Circuit Paul Ricard as being fairly flat. We know it just rises to scene from the lowest point to Zambon, but it is actually much steeper in parts than you realise, including the start.
3, 2, 1, green flag, green flag.
Okay, it was never going to be a long full course yellow period. That's why we saw Lucas Leggeret leaving the pits while it was John commented on that. But back to full speed, and for all these teams, bar one, they have to rotate all three of their drivers, give them track time in this session. The final one ahead of this afternoon's qualifying session. Fantastic camera angle there, looking down in the cockpit, and it's great, John, to see the different controls between the different cars, how much information they have, and a very rudimentary little track map stuck to the steering wheel.
Yeah, and that was, well, let's look at the Ferrari right now, the Tempesta, Sky Tempesta Ferrari, weaving down the Mistral straight to get some temperature again into the tyre. Even for that very short period of full course yellow, the tyre temperatures, pressures do drop away. So it wants to get that back up as quickly as possible. I think it's a great camera angle because it gives you a different perspective of what it's like to be sitting in a cockpit. So you're sitting looking over his right shoulder down. Interesting, a lot of drivers have the steering wheel now slightly closer to them than maybe in people's perspective of having that kind of traditional straight arm style of driving. The purpose of having the wheel closer to you, it gives you a lot more purchase, a lot more leverage when you want to make a turn, in spite of having power steering. So a little adjustment down on the control panel for Giva coming through the final turn has to do a lot of steering lock to get the car to turn, but everybody has got the same issue. So now it comes up across start finish line, and we'll begin. There it is, another flying lap, but traffic coming out of the pits. He'll be cursing in his balaclava.
Yeah, for Chiva, you can see on the windscreen 0.25, 25th on the charts. He'd rather be a lot higher than that. He's running in the Pro-Am class. He's third fastest in the Pro-Am class. We've got the Boutson Genie on BMW, second fastest. That's 16th overall, but leading the way, Alexander West in the 188 Garage 59 Aston Martin Championship Challenger. So they are going very well indeed. Don't know if Alexander said that time. It could have been Johnny Adam. It could have been Chris Goodwin. But 13th overall, very, very good indeed for them. Now, up front, the target time, 1 minute 54.278. A car we haven't seen a great deal of is the 107 Bentley. Nelson Pansatici's got to know it very, very well so far this year, but it's K-Pax Racing setting the Bentley pace.
I think it might have been Mervyn Kirchhoffer set the time of that Bentley, and that 188 Aston Martin. I think Johnny Adams is further overseas than Paul Ricard.
Sorry, it's reflex action.
But anyway, there we are. Nelson Pansatici in the 107 Bentley. Let's hope that he has a more trouble-free weekend. He's had some great periods when he's shown pace, but there have been other times when there's been issues beyond his control. Sometimes he's gotten himself involved. I remember certainly at Misano we got involved with the Lexus, and just as if the car snapped, one of those tank slappers, and he couldn't do anything about it, more or less T-boned the Lexus up at the back of the circuit. So Christopher Haase, has he improved further? He has improved further, 154.140. So Christopher Haase in the number 25 Santolog Audi, very impressive indeed.
Just going back to the 107 Bentley, John, seeing its 33rd fastest, or more to the point, very nearly slowest in the field. That would not be happy viewing at all for CMR. I do expect the pace to be picked up. It hasn't as yet, but I think he should get easily up to 20th. And then it gets harder as you approach the top 10. The margins between these cars get smaller and smaller. And in this session, we've been dealing, well, first to second is 0.138 of a second, an identical margin between second and third. But it's super, super close at the top. But for now, Nelson Pansatici nowhere near it, but that car 107 from CMR with the driver lineup of Pierre-Alexandre Jean, Seb Morris, Nelson should be much, much further up the charts. He gains one position. Oh well. Now here's the fastest car on the track, and near the track, Christopher Haase really deserves a top result. He's had so much speed this season and just so frequently been just caught out at moments when things haven't been fortunate for him, and you really feel that particularly his teammate Arthur Rougier have been a really, really good pairing so far this year, and don't know how far they're going to advance, but this weekend it's Dorian Boccolacci and Marcus Finkelhock who are sharing with Christopher, and I really fancy this as one of the star cars for the race.
To me, this is one, again, always referred to as a sleeper. I think that Christopher Haas and Marcus Finkelhoff, loads of experience, loads of maturity, but still got the pace. So what's the lap time going to be? A 1:53.969. Yet again, somebody has broken through the 1 minute 54-second barrier, and it's this number 25 Santalok Racing Audi. Good run, strong performance, particularly in that first sector. That's where all the hard yards were won by Christopher Haas.
You think about the passage of the track through that first sector. Turn 1, a slight left. Turn 2, over a bit of a brow, a slight right. But really where you're working is down through the chicane, just out of it there. 3, 4, 5. Now let's take a look at the Mistral Straight. These are exactly the same numbers I think we saw this morning. And again, look, 3 manufacturers in the top 5 positions. Raffaele Marcello just with bragging rights ahead of Sergio Sirotkin's Ferrari. And Manuel Lauk, Rinaldi Racing Ferrari. We do know. Well, just got some interesting information. This isn't for the whole session. This Mistral Straight speed trap is reset every 5 laps. So it's very much who's fastest on the straight right now.
Yeah.
All of the AWS race performance figures are reset every 5 laps. So it really is of the moment, John.
Very important information. I mean, everybody needs to know what your competitors are doing in relation to different parts of this racetrack. The Mistral Straight is the dominant part of the racetrack. It's a very long, probably the longest straight of the circuits that we visit, even exceeding that of Monza. And, of course, the Camel Straight at Spa-Francorchamps. But you have to take into account Eau Rouge and Radio, because that's virtually a straight these days. It's not a corner, as it used to be in the good old days when I remember it. But anyway, 25 continues on its way, personal best on this lap in that middle sector. So can Christopher Haas drag another 1 minute 53.9 or whatever recurring lap as he comes up across start and finish line? 1:53.969 it was. 53.972.
He's slacking. He's dropped off by 3 thousandths.
Far him.
The team chief wants consistency as well as speed, but I was just about to say, if anybody does consistent laps, Christopher's been such a star for Audi for so long now that the car is no mystery to him. He can focus on the other elements with the car, and the best of the rest can't even get within 0.3 of a second off him. So that's a remarkably good run. Now, how are things going for the other Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini and the 78 crew? That's Patrick Kugeler, Frederick Schandorf and Alex McDowell. They lead the Silver Cup overall, but they're only down in not even in the top 30 as yet in this session. This isn't necessarily about ultimate speed though, John.
Well, it isn't in that category, but what is concerning me is that the number 63 Lamborghini, that Dennis Lind, Marco Mappelli, Dennis Lind and Andrea Caldarelli, outside the top 10, outside the top 20. Don't understand that at all.
No, sitting in the pits, and it's been in the pits more than the others. 5 visits to the pits so far, it's sitting there. But you know what? That's the sort of car, that's the sort of lineup. I feel that they could almost just go out for 10 minutes and get the job done.
Have I missed it, or 6th quickest time, Tech 1 Racing, the Lexus, 6th place, that sort of popped up, slipped up there without sort of leaving a scent or anything. Where did that time come from? It's ahead of the 88 Mercedes-Benz, even been driven by Raffaele Marcello. So the Lexus has slipped up in the top 6.
Well, that really was by subterfuge. It wasn't a case of chipping one fastest lap and then putting in another close to it. But that must have been one lap struck in cover of darkness, even though it's light at Paul Ricard. But great, we've seen great speed. We've got a change. Who's moved where? Suddenly Mirko Bortolotti, he's up to 3rd place overall, so he's the better placed of the Belgian Audi Club team. WRT Audis are best placed, because in fact their cars, 31 is 3rd, 32 now in the hands of Charles Wirtz is 4th, and 33 Rick Brukers had just moved up to 6th place overall. So suddenly that Audi setup's looking strong.
I think that WRT are looking, they'd be pretty happy having 3 cars in the top 6. They'd be even happier if there were 2 cars in the provisional front row of the grid. But again, it's continuity, consistency, being able to repeat lap times. You can have a spike with one very quick single lap, but all the other times don't match it. Okay, it's great for the honour, but it's more important that your drivers can run at a consistently quick pace, lap upon lap upon lap. And I think that's where WRT have been focusing their efforts all the way through. Is there's the 66, and Whereabouts? Is that down in 12th at the minute?
Down in 12th, and it's very important for that lineup, the 66 Attempter Racing Audi, that we know that Fred Vervish and Matthias Trudy are very, very quick, but there's far less experience for Kim Lewis-Schramm. But let's see how he can do around this lap. No, doesn't go terribly fast in the first sector. The curse of deciding to look at someone's time on the screen, but Kim Lewis pressing on, got plenty of track space around him, but not pressing on at the sort of pace that the team requires at the moment. But very much, as I look at the charts, John, Audis are looking strong. They're in 1st, 3rd, 4th, 6th, and then their 5th car is in 12th position. So really at the moment they've got the share of the manufacturer honours here. Not that there are manufacturers honours, just bragging rights.
Yeah. I mean, again, just looking up and down, timing and scoring, we've got 2 silver cars in the top 7 positions, 6th and 7th. We've got the 3rd of the silver cars in 11th. That's the Garage 59 Aston Martin. I mean, that's the first time we've really seen in a session that is consistent, delivering up good times, that the Aston have been able to get there on pace and on merit.
No, exactly so. And another car, Kim Lewis-Schramm, no wonder he wasn't looking particularly racy at that point. He was on his in lap to the pits. The Dynamic Motorsport Porsche in as well. That hasn't really featured where they want it so far through this session. In fact, the best place of the Porsches is now down in 15th overall. Patrick Pilet. This morning when the track was slippery, the Porsches were at the front end of the field. So far, they haven't made their tyre works in this. And the 555 Lamborghini, that's in the Silver Cup class. Florian Latour, he's 4th fastest in the Silver Cup. He's picking his way up, but actually, you know what? He's still faster than teammate Dennis Lind, who still, has just come out of the pit lane. That was a car, John, you reckon should be quick. It's down in 22nd position.
Okay, that car was also a car that ended up in the tyre bales at the top of Radion, but the damage to it was maybe more superficial than structural. I mean, a great effort by that 63 car. Sad it ended up that particular way. But where is the 63 Audi? 63 Audi, 63 Lamborghini? Because that was the dominant car, the dominant team, and Andrea Caldarelli swept all before him. And where are they? I don't understand how you can have that level of domination. And when other brands, other entrants, Emil Fry Racing, or even the 555 is ahead of you, something fundamental isn't working.
Yeah, so the 63 Lamborghini, Dennis Lind at the wheel. He was the driver at the wheel when it went off at Radion in the Spa 24 Hours, when it very much was at the sharp end of the field. So the Dane looking to pick his way around the Aston Martin. Doesn't really need to be sitting in behind, but the Aston Martin sort of semi-opened the door and then decided not to offer track space to him. Doesn't have to. Dennis Lind yet to get in the top 20.
It's frustrating because you know that in a lap time you've got the ability to go, there we go, dives down the inside. Well, it'll be a compromised exit, and will the Aston bother the undercut? No, it doesn't bother, just lets the Lamborghini go. So Dennis Lind's got clear air for a lap, but slightly compromised on the exit of turn 15. And hopefully the Aston doesn't think about diving down the inside, because the Aston had the better exit and almost put itself into a position that Dennis Lind would not want to. Once you pass a car, you automatically delete that car from your memory bank, and all of a sudden it was poking its nose in.
Yeah, Alexander Vest certainly having a look as he turned down to Verrières, the first corner of the lap. But in fact, for Dennis Lind, he's quite close to the car in front. Is that one of the Attempter Racing Audis? And that's not going to be the greatest of helps. You could get a bit of a tow up the Mulsanne Straight, I think not, the Mistral Straight. We're not at Le Mans, we're at Paul Ricard. I now remember that. But does need to get a bit of a move on. I haven't checked how many drivers have rotated through that 63 Lamborghini as yet. We saw Marco Mappelli in it. I didn't notice if Andrea Caldarelli started the session, but they all need a go in this 90-minute session.
I don't think I haven't certainly seen Andrea in the car yet, but Dennis Lind is capable of doing everything that Andrea Caldarelli will do. So it's just unfortunate that he's catching the Attempter Audi coming into this final sector. Oh, back end, very sudden snap oversteer for Dennis Lind, and caught it. But he'll remember that next time he comes through, seeing that this thing can nip you, let alone bite you.
Yeah, it certainly had a bit of a terrier moment there. Always predictable, looking for movements. Who's top is now, well, it's still 3/10 of a second, but now Dorian Boccolacci's taken over from Christopher Haas. So Christopher set the time in the 25 Santalot Racing Audi. Now it's Dorian Boccolacci with 25 minutes to go to see what he can do. SMP Racing's Ferrari in second place, 3/10 of a second down, but just under a 1/10 of a second clear of Mirko Bortolotti in the second best of the Audis, but the best one from Belgian Audi Club Team WRT. Let's take another look at that little twitch. Didn't panic though, did he?
No, it was the transition from racetrack to curb. Just the different level of grip maybe was enough to unsettle the back of the car. There is the Lexus. Now that has done well to get up through the field. I'm just looking down to see where it is. Let's drop back somewhere. I can't find it. It said 7th.
Yeah, it was 6th when we saw it. Yeah. Good grief, how did it get there? Then Mirko Bortolotti suddenly vaulted past it to go up to 3rd in the number 31 Team WRT Audi. But it does make a great rumble, that Lexus. It looks so well balanced.
It's a great car. I mean, it works really well on the circuit like for Ricard. Circuit, I think, plays to the strengths. Look again how much confidence there is in the driver. Let the car run all the way out wide. Nobody was doing that this morning. If you did, it was with trepidation.
Right, the fastest lap. Only one driver has got into the 1 minute 54s. That's Dorian Boccolacci's car, but driven by Christopher Haas. Now Boccolacci's on board it. He's just set that car's fastest first sector time and fastest second sector time. So we could have a lowering of the gold standard. 153.969 seconds remains for now. The Lexus starting to pick up the pace. That's had its best first sector. Relatively tidy through the top of Scene. What can he do to the end?
The car looks good through Scene. I mean, how much better does a car need to look externally? Of course, what it feels like from the cockpit, from the driver's seat. But I mean, you can ride the curve there and it just sort of sprints. So the car, it's to say it's an underrated car is not the right thing to say. That's a really, really strong car. Boccolacci, by the way, has just concluded his lap with 3 greens, and
I think those
stays the same.
Listed as personal greens. Of course, he's just taken it over rather than that car's thing, which is why our screen often suggests a faster lap is coming from the car, but it's when a driver's just taken over from a teammate. But still sitting the advantage of 3/10 of a second. We've got 23 minutes remaining before this 90-minute session. The second one today, night and day different from what we had first thing this morning in terms of grip to go. Now riding aboard Rob Collard again.
Watch him checking the mirrors to the right. His head will pop over, or his eyes will pop across. Check the mirror under braking now. Look, he's sort of being, almost you can see him being pushed as the G-forces under braking. You slide, even with the belts, you still sort of marginally slide down the car. Come on, Rob, hang in there, my friend. Hardly blinks at all. Very, very slow eye movements. And then the G loads again going on the neck. You can see him having to sort of hold himself against the G-forces over the curve, a bit of a bounce and a shake. All that goes through your body. It's all right if you're a little rocket ship teenager of 18 years of age, but when you get to sort of the
past 50,
well, no, I wouldn't even put it there, but you know, your body, it gets beaten up. I mean, people don't understand that motor racing, driving a racing car, is an exceptionally physical. You are an athlete because you're sitting. And you're not sprinting 100 metres or a mile or a marathon.
Club Team WRT, the best of their cars. Number 31 in 3rd place overall. Between, in fact, almost the biggest gap in the top 13 positions is the gap between 1st and 2nd. Such is the advantage Santalot Racing have found so far.
I like the picture in the picture as we see the Ferrari getting around the Lamborghini. So there we see Rob Collard wondering, well, where's my horsepower? Can I speak to my team boss and ask for a bit more horsepower? Don't like a Ferrari passing me down the straight. Anyway, it's not about ultimate straight line speed. It's about how quickly you come onto the straight. But in fairness, the Ferraris have been mega all day coming up into Scene.
They certainly have, but really, still, as we look at Rob Collard's Lamborghini, it's not the best placed Lamborghini, but you know what? The one that's top of that table is only in 15th place overall. Emil Frey Racing have the bragging rights at the moment, but they're over a second away from the ultimate pace. Ricardo Feller, a young Swiss driver who's getting better and better as the season progresses. He is the driver at the wheel of that car at the moment. The best of the FFF Racing Team Lamborghinis, 2 places further back. That's their silver cup.
Rob, be careful. You're not meant to undo your belts. Coming into the pit lane. You can slacken them, but you can't undo the buckle. The spy in the cab has caught out drivers in the past, so you can undo the straps, loosen them, but don't undo the buckle.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, absolutely don't undo the buckle, but you can imagine drivers, even though it's a practice session where there are seconds to be lost quite easily, but still some drivers just get in that groove every time in the car. They're trying to do the fastest in, the fastest out. Haven't seen too much of Adrian Delina's car, but the 56 Porsche, the second of the cars from Dynamic Motorsport. He's showing that with Mikael Overgaard Pedersen and Andrea Rizzoli. It's down in 33rd position, but that's running in the Silver Cup class. So, of course, a battle within the overall war for them.
Yes, unfortunately, they're not in the top 20 that I can see. So it's not been a great afternoon so far for the Stuttgart, in brackets, Zuffenhausen district of Germany.
33rd fastest for that 56 Silver Cup Dynamic Motorsport Porsche. Nice and neat and tidy, but right now not dramatic, and certainly to get the really dramatic laps, the fast laps, they have been fairly dramatic so far.
Yeah, Bruce, just to say, Zuffenhausen, that's where the cars are manufactured, but actually these cars are probably built at Weissach, which is Porsche's proving ground, about 30 kilometers outside of the capital of that part of Germany, Schwabia, I think that's the area, the district.
Indeed, where they count differently, don't they? Their language is just slightly different to the High German. But always interesting having these regional variations. Is the bodywork on the back of that car? It looked a little bit down on the left at the rear. Might just be that. Let's have a little look at the left as it goes around. Would you say? Oh, no. It must have simply be the way the car was cornering.
I think it's just the load on the left rear was causing the car to. You can see it tilting there as it goes through. Every Porsche has an option of which direction they want to go with the mechanics of the car, the springs, certainly the roll bars. So maybe this car's got a slightly softer rear set up to some of the other Porsche.
Now, one name that's remarkably far down the table is Mathieu Jaminet in 16th overall. Expect him to be far higher. This morning, invariably, was in the top sort of 4 or 5 cars the whole time, sometimes fastest. But HRT with their Mercedes, they're always fast, and they're now starting to pick up the pace. Third driver to go into that cycle is Vincent Abril. Of course, I first came across him when he was racing the Bentley, but he's moved on since and really does enjoy his time in the Mercedes with HRT.
So just over 15 minutes to go, and if teams do opt to run a qualifying simulation, this is about the time of day that they would be considering doing that.
Well, we said we hadn't seen Andrea Caldarelli in the 63 Lamborghini. He's now out in that car, but if he doesn't get a move on, he's going to fall off the bottom of our timing screen, which at the moment shows us the top 24 cars in the field. He's down in 24th position. His best lap, 1.5 seconds, 1.4 seconds off the ultimate pace. Good to see the Team Parker Racing Bentley underway, because of course this morning that pulled off, and Frank Bird got out and sort of pleaded with the marshals not to spray their extinguishant under the bonnet, but certainly it was a little bit hot under there.
I think it might have been more steam than it was.
Yeah, I think so
smoke.
too.
But, but look, our marshals are here to
full course yellow in 20 seconds.
Okay.
Full course yellow in 10 seconds.
That will really obstruct those that were coming out to try and fly at the end of the session. 5,
4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow now.
Maybe debris. Well, there they get that famous bollard. It seems to be a loveless bollard. Nobody wants to look after it. Just getting punch board and goodness knows whatever else.
And apparently there is debris in turn 12. That is towards the end of the lap, but those bollards do get knocked and fly a very long way. We saw the big fix at this point of the circuit. Down, that's at the chicane. That's at turn 4, going towards turn 5. Chance for the marshals have a bit of a workout running across the track. But turn 12, that's after that's bend door towards the end of the lap.
Green flag.
Well, that was very, very quickly cleared. Well done to the marshals for getting that away. And for some drivers there, notably one of the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis, immediately picking off other cars when the track went green again. They want track space now. If they're going to find out how quick their cars can be ahead of qualifying, they want clear laps. 39th fastest, almost slower in the field for the Team Parker Racing Bentley. There's more speed in the car than that, but they've had to work back from the problem this morning.
Yeah.
Rotate through their 3 runners and see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you get a setback like that, and on top of a session, which was a very demanding session for everybody across the field. So this 1.5 hour pre-qualifying session is really the first time they're discovering everybody's potential, what is the right way to go in terms of the car setup. As long as you can get all 3 drivers fundamentally happy with the car setup, then that's the starting point from which you can go forward.
David Perel, the South African driver in that Pro-Am Rinaldi Racing Ferrari, sharing with Christian Hook and Manuel Lauck. And we've seen great speed, John, haven't we, from these Ferraris up the Mistral Straight. They've been among the quickest drivers, and certainly we saw, I think it was Manuel Lauck had set the 3rd fastest time or 4th fastest time, not just here, just a little bit further up the straight at the speed trap at the just before we turned into senior. There we have it.
I mean, I said it at Spa, and I'll say it again here. Wouldn't it be wonderful if a Ferrari were to win, not a category, but to win overall? You know, there's something about the name, the brand, the product that is still magic. And okay, they're getting beaten up in Formula One, but you know, in GT racing around the world, they're still competitive. We would love to see one standing I would certainly love to see one standing in the winner's podium here tomorrow afternoon.
Well, SMP Racing are looking pretty heavily loaded in the 72 car. Tony Villander coming to join Sergei Sirotkin, along with rising star Antonio Fuoco. But 51, don't discount that, even though it's had a rejig with Tom Blomqvist and Komi Ledegaard joining Alessandro Pierguidi. But that's definitely good. We saw the speed from that at Spa. Didn't lead to victory, but you're quite right there, John. GT Racing always should have Ferraris at the front end of the field. It feels right.
Not all the time, but no. Every day, you know, every opportunity. You know, this is the last round in Europe this season, so it would be, I think, personally, a great way to end the season.
Best placed Aston Martin in the field, riding high in the Silver Cup class, 3rd in the Silver Cup class. James Pull in the 159. Entry 1 of 2 cars from the Garage 59 crew. He's now got nice clear track, as has James Pull's in the background of the shot there, looking at Vincent Abril going up the start-finish, the Mistral Straight. He's got space. He's just in front of James. James Pull, British racer, accelerating over the crest into little compression, rising again. The track kicks up just ahead of scene, and then being as brave as you possibly dare. Clean, tidy, just over the curbs, nothing untoward.
So, of course, last year we had our motorsport running in the pro category. Those cars no longer competing this year. So these are racing in Pro-Am and Silver Cup categories. So they're not actually seeking overall victory. Again, Aston Martin, an iconic brand, this time an archetypically British brand, looking to restructure at every level in its history. And it makes its way back into the pit lane just over 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, certainly Aston Martin always wants to go racing when they possibly can, but perhaps saving the company at the moment is the arrival of its SUV. So many major sports car manufacturers have put out an SUV and they've sold in volumes they've never sold at before. It seemed at first when they came out almost sacrilegious to me.
Tell me, what is an SUV these days? I'm confused what an SUV is.
I don't know, I just trot it out from time to time. A car that a large dog can't jump into is my reckoning. A little terrier can make the leap, but a bigger pooch certainly can't to get in the boot. Right, who's going to topple Sansalot Racing? Dorian Boccolacci at the wheel at the moment, but the time was set by Christopher Haase. 1 minute 53.969. Best of the rest, 0.3 of a second down, and get speed performance. They could start working their way towards the front. Fabian Schiller certainly on the move in the number 100 Mercedes, but not in the top 10. Only down in 15th place, but he is improving. He's one of the few drivers at the moment actually starting to make up ground.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's, again, you look through the field of cars, you have to say the Get Speed Mercedes with Jelmer Berman, Fabian Schiller and Alessandro Larandi. A car that, okay, maybe it's not going to be a car that will win the race, but a car that could be very, very strong when we get to the sort of the last hour or so of this 6-hour race. Of course, you've got to keep out of trouble. You've got to make sure that all your pit stops go to plan. There will be full course yellows, there will be safety car interventions, and that then sort of throws in the element of good fortune, or luck as it's sometimes called, that you could be at the right part of the wrong part of a racetrack when access to a pit lane, the opportunistic access to a pit lane, is available to you. But look at the way Schiller's just chucking that Mercedes run. You wouldn't think it's a €300,000 supercar. He's treating it like it's sort of, well, what do you call it? One of those little horrible things from East Germany.
Trabant?
Trabant. He's throwing it around like a Trabant.
I wondered where you were going on that. But, but also you just touched, John, there on a factor so important, even in a sprint cup race, spread over an hour. Pit stops, get speed performance. Adam Osieka's team learning all the time. They're doing lots of racing, dipping their toe in this pond, but lots of racing on the Nürburgring long distance races. But speed in pit stops, or precision in pit stops, not making mistakes, particularly in this 1,000-kilometre race, that really can make or break. Now, who is starting to make the moves? Just wait, it's still the Sansalok Racing 25 Audi, top of the charts by 0.3 of a second.
There's nothing really changed that I can see in the top 10. I mean, Schiller is up to 10th place now, so he is the only person in the recent time that's actually made any progress. So they've done a good job, 1 minute 54.5. So that puts him alongside, if this was to be the grid, arguably, alongside the AF Corsa Ferrari, Leaderboard behind the wheel, although that car's on track presently. So that was a good run from Schiller, even though he did look like he was having to work hard to drag that time from the car. So we go back to the number 9 Bentley. That's Andy Soucek behind the wheel, the Spanish Bentley driver. Roars, I mean, that Bentley roars.
Finally getting an improvement. Mad Panda Motorsport, Ezekiel Perez-Compang, one of the first drivers in the past, first few drivers in the past 15 minutes to improve. Only going to 13th, but importantly for him, that moves him to 3rd in the Silver Cup class. He's driving only with Patrick Assenheimer this weekend, but for Ezekiel, in the combined championship, that's the Sprint Cup combined with the endurance, he's leading the way. He could take a title in his first season.
That's
he's pressing on.
A very good effort by Ezekiel Perez-Compang. So one of the few driver car pairings that have actually made progress. And as we watch Rodrigo Baptista, 14th place for Bentley. So what can they do on this lap? 8/10ths down in sector 1. That's against the fastest, not against his personal best.
Well, still waiting for a time to come from Orange 1 FFF Racing Team, and now it's still Emil Frey Racing as the top Lamborghini, now with Mikkel Mack on board this weekend, up to 11th fastest, but it's not what you expect. I really expected the Lamborghinis to be right at the sharp end this weekend. It may yet happen, but so far only 11th, so a bit of a surprise for them. And for Mikkel Mack, the young Dane, normally been seen racing Ferraris for the last handful of years. In fact, he was a champion in the European Le Mans Series in GTE class as long ago as 2015. But good to have him back on track. First thing he's done all year.
He backed out of it. Rodrigo Baptista backed out.
First big change for a while. GPX Racing up to 5th place. Their Porsche suddenly from nowhere, i.e. outside the top 15. Thomas Preining, the young Austrian driver, suddenly gets it right into the mix. He's right on the tail now of the 32 and 31 Audis, so he could yet move into the top 3. It's only practice, but it's about getting something to carry into qualifying.
I have to say, it's not unexpected, and I'm not surprised. So you spend your hour and a half, you spend an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, doing your homework, getting everything as you want it for the race. And then you give your driver, in this case Thomas Preining, who's pretty impressive, I have to say, another young star already and a future star in GT racing. So, I mean, look, it's not just what Preining has done. He's been given the equipment, mostly the tyre, and that's where the time will be coming from.
Yeah, but very much on Porsche's books, in their good books too. Performed great, very well the last handful of years in the German Porsche series and the Porsche Super Cup, but transitioning well to this. Mikkel Mack now down to 13th because we've had another improvement from Mad Panda Motorsport. Ezekiel Perez-Compang up to 12th. Who else has made that move? It's still Sansalot Racing leading from SMP Ferrari, Audi versus Ferrari, then the two Team WRT Audis, then the Porsche. So the improvement, someone at the bottom end of the top 10 has moved in. But Mikkel Mack getting in some decent laps. Emil Fry Racing, Ricardo Feller, they are now in 14th place. So the Lamborghini's up and down the order, but for Emil Fry Racing, there are two Lamborghinis. 163 is in 13th, and the sister car 14 is in 16th. So they're still ahead of all the FFF Racing Team Lamborghinis.
And to some degree, they've been ahead of them pretty much throughout the season when they've been racing against one another. So it's hard to explain how the level of dominance that FFS Racing illustrated last year has somewhere or other left them.
Yeah, not showing it yet. The 63 car, which really is their gun car, is down in 21st position overall, Andrea Cordarelli. But of course, they could have had a top result in the 24 hours at Spa, but it didn't happen for them. And sometimes you just feel the form is escaping, even when things don't quite go your way. You might feel they would, but then when they start going the other way, you really do start to wonder. But the team's too good for that.
Yeah, so the only solution, the only answer to find the time if you're struggling mechanically is, well, the cheap and dirty thing is to throw a set of rubber at it. But it's a fool's mission, because if the car isn't right, the tire's only going to give you a false time, which ultimately isn't going to be the solution. So I don't know what the problem is, other than 3 minutes remaining. I'm going to see that 63 Lamborghini suddenly leapfrog its way all the way up to the top 2, 4, 6, 8 or 10. Well, time's running out, the clock's counting down.
Certainly is. Antonio Fuoco still producing lap times that a lot of drivers further down the order outside the top 15 would be very, very keen to have. But like so many cars, just down from the ultimate pace they showed earlier in the session when they had a little bit more tyre life. Don't know how many of these crews have used a whole lot of fresh rubber. If you're fairly confident you're in the ballpark or thereabouts, you keep your rubber for qualifying. But for SMP Racing, second fastest at the moment, top Ferrari, they'll take that.
And also, if you're really economical with your tyre usage, you might have a few new sets for various key points when it comes to it. I mean, what's going to happen in the first 5 hours is only setting everything up for the final 1 hour. As these two Ferraris battle, it's 72 and the 51, I think it is, behind it.
John, you've clearly done this before. This is actually the 50th endurance race involved for this championship, so a real landmark here. Person who's just been putting some quick lap times in, still stays in 6th position overall. It's the HRT Mercedes, but Vincent Abril came within a few thousandths of matching his best. So in these final 2 minutes, let's see if the Monegasque racer for HRT can improve. But really, I think we've seen the best of almost all the rubber from almost all of the drivers. Don't expect a great change at the top. I don't expect anyone to topple Dorian Boccolacci, or more to the point, the car he's driving with a time set by Christopher Hasse, the 25 Santalot Racing Audi, still top of the pile by 0.3 of a second.
Just not noticing any particular changes in the top 10 in these last moments, just over a minute or so before the checkered flag is unfurled, and the 72 pounding away, still pushing hard. Car looks great. And if you were to how would you describe a car that looks like that?
Red, white and blue, John. Red, white and blue, the colours of Russia from SMP Racing, but just so well balanced. It's always intriguing seeing when a driver comes from single seaters and has to settle in to GT racing. It's not always a given, but some take to it so well. They drive it differently though, John, don't they?
Well, a single seater is sharp, precise. A heavier GT or a touring car is, one might call it, lazy and ponderous. That's all relative. It's only relative one compared to the other. But within the GT world, something like the Ferrari, which is fundamentally a race car, it's been designed as a race car and then adapted to road circumstances and road usage. Well, you don't get a better foundation to work from.
Another really, really good lap from Vincent Abril. That's 3 laps in a row within 0.1 of a second, all good for 6th place in the practice session. So he, at least for HRT, has found some great form to add to the speed of Maro Engel and Lucas Stoltz, the two drivers who drive it all year. Vincent does the endurance rounds with them. So HRT, I think, will be feeling really quietly pleased. 6th fastest, but consistently quick. The checkered flag is out. 90 minutes of practice is coming to an end. Of course, the drivers will complete this, their final flying laps.
So Leaderboard, the second of these two Ferraris coming across the line, comes across the line, stays in 10th place.
To be honest, I think any late improvements move down the bottom end of the field. I find it extraordinary that I have to look down to 20th place to see the number 12 GPX Racing Porsche, Mathieu Jaminet, but suddenly he could be the one driver who's going to find some speed on this final lap. He's just set the best first sector for him, and the no, that's him rather than the car.
Yeah, for his first and second sector for Jaminet.
So Jaminet's come over the start-finish line. It hasn't moved up our timing screens yet. We know he's just turning into turn one. He doesn't. He stays down in 20th position, but that's a car, particularly if it turns a little bit wet tomorrow, that could work its way up the order. Very good when the track was slippery this morning. So look out for Mathieu Jaminet, and it seems weird to have to dip your head so much, look so far down the timesheet to find it. That's a crew, that's a car that is very much at the sharp end of the championship in terms of pace through these endurance rounds in particular.
It's difficult to know the reasons why the Porsche is where it is, or for that matter, Santalok Racing is quickest of all. You know, if we were allowed to walk into the paddock and stand and talk to drivers, engineers, but we have to stay in our little world, our little commentary world, Bruce. That's one of the things that really has been difficult to, because the information that we gain from speaking to drivers and team and engineers, we don't have that access any longer.
Yeah, just almost even seems like a throwaway answer, but this number 12 Porsche, Mathieu Jaminet, is fourth in the championship at the moment, so they will be tearing their hair out if, when qualifying is over, they're still down in 20th position. Of course, it's all swept clean. The times mean nothing now, but they do mean something in their own way. They don't count towards qualifying, but they count towards confidence.
Well, it's a bit like, I suppose, if you're playing cards, let's say playing a game of bridge.
Oh, well, let's take a look. Only one of the crews got under 1 minute 54 seconds. It was Christopher Hasse who took the bragging rights alongside his teammate Marcus Winkelhock and Dorian Boccolacci in their Santalok Racing Audi. It was a Ferrari in second place, Antonio Fuoco, Tony Verlander and regular racer Sergei Sirotkin. Best of the Audis. In third place, Kelvin van der Linde sharing with Rolfin Eichen and Mirko Bortolotti, just a tiny fraction ahead of Dries van Tor, Christopher Mies and Charles Weerts, their teammates. Romain Dumas, the top Porsche racer, in fifth overall, with Louis Delatraz and Thomas Preining, who set their time right at the end of the session. Top runner in Silver Cup class in seventh place overall. That was the 33 Audi from Team WRT. Top runner in Pro-Am in 19th, Ram Racing, Tom Onslow Cole, bringing that car to the end of the session. Still a few famous names, quick names in quick cars, down as low as 30th position. The field ran all the way down to 40th place, and the last car out onto the circuit after a problem in first practice this morning and lengthy repairs, they end up last of all. So Santalok Racing, they're first and they're 40th in a 40-car field, but it matters not. Qualifying is coming up. This session, unlike the morning session, held in fabulous autumnal conditions. The track had some grip, it had some temperature. Still, though, the Paul Ricard circuit is a place which drivers have to work very hard indeed. Early problems, a front right puncture for the Buisson-Gignon BMW, and then drivers just racing for place on the track. A problem for the 163 Lamborghini. I think that little bit of bodywork was at the edge of the track and simply driven over rather than falling off. Christopher Mies really pressed on for the 32 Audi from WRT. The Lexus came from nowhere to vault into sixth place. It fell down to eighth by the end, but certainly for a lot of the drivers, when they got down to the chicane, if they couldn't turn in, they turned around it, and that was just keeping out of the way. They're very sensible from the 89 ACA ASP Mercedes. And the Ferraris 51 from AF Corse are pushing very hard, always near the front end, the number 4 Mercedes from the Hout Racing team. Now a fabulous high shot in the cockpit of the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari, looking down and just checking what Eddie Cheever the third gets up to. Second fastest time went to the SMP Racing Ferrari, but it was the 25 Santalok Racing Audi with Christopher Hasse that set the ultimate pace by 0.3 of a second. Senior, there was a massive twitch for the 63 Lamborghini, caught beautifully by Dennis Lint at the most fearsome of corners. Santalok Racing going better and better. Dorian Boccolacci putting in some quick times too as the Audi prevailed from the 72 SMP Racing Ferrari. And that's how it was at the end. The 51 Ferrari also charging for AF Corsa. But this final practice session belongs to Sansalot Racing. They top the charts by 0.3 of a second.